$10 million in revenue. Russell Sage is the co-founder and co-CEO of Femmer Academy. Before graduating high school, he's already generated over $10 million in sales, built and managed high-ticket sales teams, and hit close rates as high as 81% on certain offers. He's worked behind the scenes, helping scale multi-million-dollar programs through sales systems and training, and now mentors hundreds of students breaking into remote high-ticket sales. Today, we're going to break down how he thinks about sales psychology, building teams, and what actually drives results in the high-ticket sales space. Russell Sage, welcome to the show.
What's going on, Ethan? Excited to be here.
All right, sweet. Likewise. So, Russell, you've already generated over $10 million in revenue before really even graduating high school. What were the key moments that actually led to that outcome?
Yeah, I think the big thing that I don't really want to overlook, and I don't know if a lot of people might say this, but it really is so important. And I'm going to start literally all the way at the beginning, starting. And the reason I say that is because so many people DM me every single day. And it's like, oh, I bought this course. I bought this course. I watched these videos. What do I do now? Like, how can I do this? Can you mentor me? Can you help me? And a lot of the time, I'll literally just respond to them and I'll just say start with a smiley face. The reason why is because everybody overlooks that. And I started, just so that you know, even like my background, I started online business at 14 years old. So I was a freshman in high school, and it took me over a year before I saw any sort of valuable results whatsoever. Before that, it was failure after failure with multiple different business models. Failure. But I never stopped. I continued trying. Eventually, I got into sales, which is when I was 15, my sophomore year. And if I quit, if I didn't stay consistent, I wouldn't be here right now. So that's a super key thing, is just starting in the first place. Also, investing in my first mentor and my first couple mentors was a big turning point. But I think if I never started, I obviously wouldn't be here. I don't want people to overlook that.
Yeah, 100%. And for context, for everyone who's listening, Russell and I, even though we somewhat know each other, he used to be my sales manager close to 1.5 to 2 years ago. We was a growth operating one, and I know you were going to kill it once you asked me hey, are you available for a mock call? And then I think you followed up with me multiple times. I followed up with you multiple times. I said, no, I'm busy. I'm on a closing call. I said, bro, already progressed from this to that. So what mistake taught you the most early on? I know you've done agencies, your clothing brand. What mistake taught you the most early on?
I think this is, I'll give you an answer, and this is totally the mistake that taught me the most, but it's almost retrospectively, because I didn't really realize it in the moment until I solved it kind of without thinking. But the biggest mistake that I made when I started is I tried to start businesses. And as funny as that sounds, that's the biggest mistake, because everybody talks about online business, and you talk about high ticket sales like it is online business. But at the end of the day, it was only marketed as a business model in the last 2 years. Before that, it was always just a job, and people looked at it that way. But I tried to start a drop shipping company. I didn't know how to build websites. I had no money for ads. Even if I had money for ads, I didn't know how to run ads. I didn't know how to create viral content. I didn't know how to find winning products. That's just 5 or 6 of the skills that go into running that business. I tried to start a marketing agency. Again, same thing. You need to know sales. You need to know lead generation. You need to know how to fulfill for your clients. I didn't know any of that. I started a clothing brand, and literally just struck by a stroke of luck, I actually made some sort of money with that. And then what happens is, if you start online business or whatever you start, you can get lucky. It's very possible. But if you don't actually take the time to build the skills, you will go back to zero. So for me, I got lucky. My clothing brand hit a few million views on TikTok, probably 15, 20 million views. And so I sold out my first drop. I sold out my second, but I had no skill set. I didn't focus on learning. And so what happened is, by my third drop, plateaued to zero, got chargebacks, literally went overdraft, because I had no skill set. So I would say the biggest mistake I made by far is I focused on starting these businesses instead of focusing on one skill, something that I can apply in other businesses, and make money that way, and then actually learn how to start my own business. So it comes down
100%.
to, yeah.
100%. And for me as well, just to add on to that, my path and your path is very similar. I started with a business model. First ever business model for me was e-commerce. So similar to drop shipping. I resold items on eBay. and then also like eBay to Amazon arbitrage. And for that, there was so many things doing on it. And funny enough, I'm doing taxes to this day just because I still have like so many products. I have like 300 products left in my office, like right over there, of all the items that I bought from Salvation Army, Goodwill, thrift shops, Goodwill bins. And
Yeah.
it's still not necessarily a mess, but it's still like that burden that you have on your like top of your mind of like I have to clear this out before I graduate, etc. So what are when we're speaking about business, like what are your short-term goals less than 12 months? And what are your long-term goals 12 months plus?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Honestly, I'll start this off by saying I don't think about my goals anymore as much as I should. But I would say just very, very quickly off the top of my head, next 12 months, 500 grand a month, would be a goal. Uh, Other than that, monetarily, I don't really have too many goals. Oh, I guess on Instagram, I'd like to be at 25,000 followers. On YouTube, probably like 10,000 subscribers. TikTok, 10,000. Something like that. Longer term, though, in the broad
Yeah.
scheme of things, I'd love to have 1,000 successful students inside of my program. We're at a couple hundred right now. I'd love to have over 1,000 in there. I'd love to grow my influence so much. So that the videos that I post on YouTube, which hold a lot of value, can reach more people, help more people, get them started. I'm working on a software right now that I'd like to get built out and I'd like to fully flesh out the idea and like actually get that built out. I'd like to work into that space a little bit more, hold some equity. Obviously, info is great, but it's not
Yeah.
exitable. And yeah, that's some of the goals.
Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing that. So like what skills are you intentionally building right now to get to those goals? Because I know you have like sales, you have marketing, you can speak really, really well. You're doing
Right.
successful all the info, but like what current skills, what hard work are you doing right now to get to your goals?
Yeah, I think, like you said, sales, marketing, actually speaking is one of the biggest things that I'm trying to consistently build out. Because the thing is, I can have these skills and like I couldn't speak at all, and I'm a little bit sick right now, so that's why my voice sounds
That's
like a little
fine.
bit. But I couldn't speak, period. 3 years ago, not at all. I couldn't sell. I couldn't run ads. I couldn't post content. There was no way I was going to be able to do that. But even though I have those skills, doubling down on them is something that I work at every single day, especially speaking. I think that's big that you brought that up because a lot of people don't even view that as a skill. But your words are what hold power. If you look at the most influential people in the world, why are they influential? It's because they can speak and their words hold a weight to them. And so that's probably the biggest skill that I'm trying to consistently work on every single day. And I think aligns most with my goals of eventually just becoming more influential. Beyond that, in terms of new skills, little stuff, like just understanding. I mean, I guess AI is not like a big skill, but trying to understand and leverage that to the best of my ability, new use cases, things like that. Like I talked about software. I'm not going to learn how to code. I'm not going to learn JavaScript because I have Claude Code and Codex that are just going to do it for me. But
Yeah.
figuring out how to work through those things, different use cases, things like that.
Okay, cool. So when you since you're talking about like learning new skills, but also doubling down on what your current skill is and moving past that to an extent, like are you investing in any programs? Because I know you invested in a few. We can
Yeah.
name them maybe later on. But what current like programs have you invested into recently, if you want to disclose?
Yeah, I've invested more specifically. So what I've done is in the beginning, I was investing into specifically programs. And then as I progressed, it switched to like one-on-one mentors. And then there were a few programs that I invested in. Me and my business partner uh, invested in Jeremy Haynes.
Oh, you
Um,
did.
yeah, that was somewhat recent. But I think the biggest thing is one-on-one for me. I like the programs. I like the courses, honestly. However, I think I learned better one-on-one, and I think I picked up on that super early. And so that's always something that I try and do. So there are one-on-one mentors. I always try and have a mentor. So even if it's somebody that I'm paying little to nothing, like I've had, for example, my second mentor was significantly worse and cheaper than my first, but it was because I stopped paying my first mentor. So I was working with my first mentor for a good decent amount of time, got me into high ticket sales, placed me on offers, helped me out a lot, taught me a ton of stuff. And then I stopped working with him, and it was because I was doing very well. But what I realized was like I didn't really have somebody to ask questions. Like if I had a question, who am I going to go to? And so I hired this guy just like off the top of my head, like this random guy, honestly, that I found, paid him very little, helped me out a little bit. But funny enough, that relationship circled back, and now he coaches inside my program recently and closes. So that's an example. I try and work more one-on-one. It's a personal preference. I'm curious what you like, because you really do have to learn for yourself.
100%. First thing to like, just to add on to your point, road to $1 million months is on the way for you with Jeremy's program, which is sweet. And yeah, with my style of learning, I'm very visual. I'm a visual learner for sure. I learn hands-on. That's why I know we talked right before we hit the record button about like what our future plans are. We going to college? Are we not? Etc.
Right.
So along the lines of that, visual learner, love to get my hands dirty. And then as long as there is a great incentive for me to learn, whether it is like, how does this current skill tie into what I want to do? And then additionally too, I've had a very small struggle with this, is working on hard things just for the sake of them doing like the hard things, but additionally doing the hard things that also get me to my goals. And I found that the second option is the better. So when it comes to,
Totally.
and just to transition here, is when it comes to shaping your brand. I know you talked with Mason about that. Like he gave you your idea of like, I should start a mentorship program. No, and I'm also in the game as well. Like I'm already making money with closing. So like how intentional was your brand from the start?
It was really intentional. I focused on my age in my hooks, and that's how I ended up on that podcast, and that's how I grew my Twitter super, super big. And that's how I grew my Instagram, period, or I grew my YouTube. 9 out of 10 hooks have my age in it. I think that's good and bad. I think it's good because it's very rare. Obviously, you're young as well. Not many people are doing that, which is why those hooks work well. At the same time, they aren't indefinite. You get older and older every single year. I'm coming up on 18 in the next 6 months, and I started at 15. It's pretty crazy. But beyond that, it's been very intentional of, teaching sales as somebody who's in the game, or having coaches who are always in the game as well. I think that that's a big thing that most sales, at least when I started a sales mentorship, most people weren't focused on that. Now there are a lot more people selling high ticket sales. A lot of people kind of blew up. But I think that's a good question. I've always been very intentional with my brand. I think I've always been very consistent. I don't think I've been all over the place with who I am or what I'm looking to do. Beyond just like development, it's been very consistent.
And like for me as well, I know you're more of a sales guy, but I know like Andres has mentioned this before, and like he likes sales, but he also likes the marketing side of it too. And that's what I kind of specialize in as well. So for me, marketing is the ability to stand out without breaking trust. I know you mentioned your age. Like you could always throw in an authority hook. For instance, I know like Alex Hormozy does this well. My name is Alex Hormozy. I run a portfolio of companies that do $250 million a year in aggregate revenue. And that's most of his hooks in his long form videos. So I know you mentioned your age, and I know you probably have like, I made this as well. But what are some other ways that you're positioning yourself outside of revenue numbers, authority level things, and your age?
When you say authority level things, what do you mean?
So revenue, stats, like I cash collected 25 grand in one day.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm positioning myself as somebody who is very balanced. I think that's one thing that I really try and focus on, because that's another thing that's just rare that people don't find, that I'm still in school, that I'm still a student, that I still play sports for my high school, which I think is crazy. Most people would not do that or don't do that. I don't know of anybody else that really does that. That's a big position for me, being able to be balanced at that level and still have friends and not cut off your day ones. And what was the other thing? But not dropping out of high school. That's another thing. I try and have these angles that are true to me. Like, this is what I genuinely believe. and most people don't, and I can back them up as well. Those are some of the angles that I try and have, and how I try and position myself as that person, because it's very rare. Overall, having a unique value proposition, or a unique angle that other people aren't following, that's what I've always tried to do. I feel like that works best as well. You can tell me, I'm sure you know more.
100%. Yeah, and additionally, just to cover a point that you briefly mentioned earlier, there's a massive influx of people trying to get into high ticket sales. And then additionally, there's a massive influx of people who are starting their own offers. So that's
Yeah.
why I asked you those questions earlier, but like, how are you truly positioning yourself to like stand out? Because I know like with high ticket sales, with the online business game, this industry moves so fast
Yes.
and so crazy, especially with the infinite feedback loops. It's just technology moves way faster than the in-person world, and that's why I'm still in it. So when it comes to principles standing out, if you had to name one principle that stayed true across everything you've done in like sales and business, what would it be?
Consistency. Consistency and moving forward. I think that those are two things that when you put them together, it's endlessly powerful. People are not consistent. And the reason I say that is because when I started again at 14, and I started drop shipping, and then I started a marketing agency, and then I started a clothing brand, and then I started DM setting, and then I started closing, and then I started operating, and then I started my own business. The key is that I continued, number one, I continued moving forward to the next thing. And number two, I was extremely consistent. I overlapped that so fast. It's like, oh, and then I started dropshipping, then I started marketing agency. These are 6-month endeavors where I posted for dropshipping at least 3 times a day organically,
Yeah.
with no results whatsoever. For marketing agency, cold called hundreds of businesses with absolutely no results, not a single dollar. But I did that for years. And the reason why is because I believed in it. I believed in myself. I thought I could do it. And I was very consistent. And it's also, I don't know if people have said this before, but it's not enough to just be consistent, but you have to consistently be consistent. And I was consistently consistent for 2 or 3 years straight until I reached some sort of result. And then at that point, I've earned the position to get the results that I got. You don't just reap the reward. You have to actually sow it first. You have to actually put the work in. So consistency totally is something that, again, it's very simple and it's very easy. And it sounds very simple, but people don't do it. So if I could sit across anybody, I would tell them straight up, you can start sales, you can start trading, whatever. You can look up on YouTube, how do I make money online? Make sure it's a legitimate opportunity that people actually make money with. And if you do that for a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes, you do it every single day, you will inevitably be successful with it. You won't fail. And yet people still don't do it. So consistency. And then also, like I said, just continuing to move forward. There's no time to take a step back. There's no time to, when you fail, but beyond quick reflection, there's no time to just sulk about that and be upset.
100%.
Figure something out. Those are the 2 things that I've been super heavy on that helped me out.
Cool. So quick follow-up, since I'm curious, I used to do cold calling and you did too for your marketing agency. What was your opener?
It was the same thing that I do now. Hey, name. And then I go forward from that. And then I go into, I just looked on your website, and I wasn't able to book an appointment, or I wasn't able to do X, Y, and Z. And whether they had a website or not, if they didn't have one, then it would kind of be perfect. But if they did have one, then it would be the same thing. But I got hung up on all the time. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I used to work with someone who ran a website design agency, and we kind of had the similar thing of like we quickly funnel hacked them and then made sure like, do they have a website or not? And then like, how does our offer can potentially help them? So to transition more into the sales based thing, a lot of sales training focuses on scripts, but great closers usually tend to understand the psychology part of it and frameworks. So like, what mental model or framework do you think most people miss when learning about high ticket sales?
That's a good question. I won't try and I'll be brief on a couple different points instead of just putting it on one thing.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people should look into Eli Wild and look into NLP when they get started in sales, putting people in frames, putting people in what's called a resourceful state, labeling them with different things, being helpful, reasonable, and smart. These are things that really do work. But beyond that, I think just very broadly, actually listening and understanding an entire picture. So the way that I explain closing, the way that I try and look at it is understanding the entire picture of an entire puzzle of somebody's life. So when I ask them situation questions, when I ask them problem, I want to fully understand that entire section before I move on to the next. And I think people get caught up on the frameworks and just asking question by question by question by
Yeah.
question, and they focus on shortening their call length. But rather, for me, where I found a lot of success is just understanding this person to a full extent, to where if I get into objection handling and they give me an objection, I completely understand them. I completely know where they're coming from. I can look at it from their shoes, from their perspective, and I should be able to handle that objection relatively well. So I wouldn't move on to the next section until I fully understood it. Eventually, at the end of the call, I have that entire puzzle built out. For me, that's the best way that I would that's how I was able to close 80% of people in a month. I jumped on, and if I was on a call person, they closed unless they weren't qualified. So yeah, actually listening, actually understanding everything about something. Don't just focus on going question to question, but don't move on until you really understand what you're talking about. Don't just move on. That's
100%. Yeah, for me, I used to be in like the sales space and did help some people with like the sales training process, specifically around setting. I wasn't a closer. I didn't like practice closing. However, a lot of the sales skills from setting can be directly applied to closing. It's just like a longer call, and it's like the same framework. So when I speak to people and they're completely new to high ticket sales, there's a lot of like analogies that I give to people. One being like the prospect is driving the car, you're in the like shotgun, you have all the maps, all the information, and they're listening to you. And it's also very similar to driver's ed. You don't have the steering wheel, but you have like the emergency brake on your end too. Second, it kind of goes back to what you said earlier about a lot of closers get stuck into like asking the next question without truly listening to the prospect. So I always found that around setting, you must constantly flow like water, like the entire time. And I found like, disagree if you want to, but I found that my best way is, let's say there's like question number 7 and I have a fantastic opportunity to ask it, but it's at the beginning of the call. I would ask it compared to like jumping like back and forth when I had the fantastic opportunity to do it. And another thing too is with sales, you have to be ahead of the person. And how I think of it for analogy, this is more of a lesser known martial art. It's called Salat or Silat. It's where like the hand motions, like you hit someone, their body reacts this way, you jab them the other way, and you're always constantly move like 7, 8 moves ahead of them. And that's another thing that I tend to do. And another thing is getting people to know, like, trust you and respect you. And I got all 3 done in setting, but I sometimes missed out on the like the respect part. Even though you're a setter, you still have to gain some type of authority, some type of respect for them. Yeah, hold the entire frame the entire time. So one quick follow-up question. I know you said like people try to like just reduce their calls so they can just go on the next call. When do you know it's a good time to talk, like let the prospect stay in their current situation for a couple more minutes, which does extend the call length, but you know that it will increase the likelihood of having success on that call for you, but also the prospect?
Yeah, it has to do with when you don't fully understand what you're asking. So, for example, if you're in the situation phase and you don't fully understand their situation, you still have questions, or they haven't answered one of your questions, you stay. You don't move on. So, like, if I ask somebody, why they decided to get into X, Y, and Z that they're in right now, and they give me like a little block answer, like an ego shield answer, like they don't necessarily give me it, I'm going to stay there and I'm going to ask them it again, maybe in a different way. Maybe I'll move on to a different situation question, come back to it. But you don't move on from that section until you fully understand it. So that's very, very simple. It's an easy answer. Don't move on until you fully understand it. They've answered all of your questions. Then go right away. Go right ahead, move on. Next section, completely okay. And And yeah, the additional minutes to the call, I feel like a lot of people focus on getting their call length down, but that's contingent on, if you're not missing on deals, missing on closes because you're
100%.
moving on. If you're taking 5 minutes off of each of your calls and you're closing at a 20% lower rate, it's not worth it. The math doesn't add up. You have to be able to keep that close rate incredibly high, and then you can reduce the call length. And I did that a little bit, but you also have to know who you're talking to. And there's certain prospects where I've done 15-minute closes, 5-minute discovery, 5-minute pitch, 5-minute close. Like I've done 15-minute calls on a $3,000 offer or something like that. But there's other prospects where I've spent 2 hours talking to them, going through everything, and I still got the close. Same result. And, if you're on an offer where you got back-to-backs all day and back-to-back quality calls, then you can maybe be a little bit stricter with it. But for most people, that's not the case. For most people, you can spend the extra 10 minutes and increase your close rate by 20%.
Yeah, 100%. And as well, one of my favorite stories from this, I'm guessing you're familiar with Matt Ryder, the former head of sales for Jeremy Minor. His kind of thing is like, if a prospect doesn't really answer, you kind of have to slap them. So that's one of my favorite ways to do it. You just jump in, be done, be assertive the entire time. If they don't answer your question, you have to find a way to get them to answer their question, even if it means that you jump a little bit ahead so you can pull them back in. So when we're speaking about closing, etc., what mistakes do new closers make in the first 5 minutes of the call outside of just not getting the full answer from the prospect?
Yeah, they build too much rapport. Number one, they completely skip over problem awareness. As number two, they don't properly lead in and transition their questions, so it sounds more like an interview and like a question to question. They don't probe. They don't go deeper. They don't ask emotion-based questions. So for example, if I ask somebody, how's their job going, and they're like, yeah, it's all right. What I would do is be like, all right, what do you mean all right?
Yeah.
They don't do that. They don't do emotion-based questions. They don't do follow-ups or probes, period. What's the other thing that I said? Problem awareness. Skipping over problem awareness is one of the biggest problems that I see with new people inside of sales, setting and closing. Problem awareness is one of the only problem awareness and consequence are the only parts of the call where the prospect doesn't really want to answer those questions. Everybody's fine talking about their situation for the most part, unless it's terrible. Everybody loves talking about their goals. They love talking about their future. They don't like talking about what's going wrong in their life that's driving them to start, or what's going to happen if they never make that change. So that's why that's more difficult to do. That's why most people miss out on it. And it's super important. Problem is probably the most important process in the entire call. So there's that. Also rapport. A lot of new closers build rapport for 5 minutes, 3 minutes, waste of time, no need. If you're a good closer, you'll build rapport throughout the entire call. You'll educate them and build a lot more respect that way. And I think, like you said, having that respect aspect is going to be taken away if you're asking them questions about their dog and about, the background of their Zoom for 5 minutes. Spend 20 seconds on it, 30 seconds, and then move on. And if you want, I could tell you the way that I do that.
I was just about to ask. You can go ahead.
I ask one very, very, very simple question. I'll tell you exactly how I do it. But the very simple question that I ask is, busy day? And it's very, very easy. I go in, I start the call. I say, oh, how are you doing? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then the only question that I ask is, busy day so far? How's that kind of going? And they'll tell me, oh, yeah, I just came back from work, or no, it's kind of just been a chill day. Like, yeah, that's always good, man. It's always good to have a chill day. Anyways, though, let's kind of just jump into everything, set the frame, jump into the call. Or if, maybe they had work all day, like, oh, yeah, what do you do for work? And then it goes back into what you said. If you have that question, I wasn't going to ask that right away. I'll ask it here, and then I'll circle back to it there, because I completely agree. I think that the framework, it's called a framework and not a script, because you can move things around. You can flow like water. You can bring questions into different positions as long as you stay true to the actual overarching sections and you move sectionally. And it flows smoothly. Flowing smoothly is super important.
Yeah, you'll definitely have to flow like water the entire time. And like you said, you don't just rebuild rapport in the building, rapport like in the first part of the call, rebuild it the entire time. And every single part of the sales process, like you can do future pacing at the end, at the beginning. You have to do the entire thing once you get super really good. So I had a question around when you say busy day. I know, like, if you're familiar with Chris Voss, he's like the FBI negotiator, etc. He did it one time to a guy who seemed like he was having a bad day, and he was like his Uber or something. And he said, busy day, good day. And by the way, like the how you frame the question, like what you specifically say, your word choice can frame their emotions in a way. So when you say like busy day, and of course then talks about their day, make them reflective, etc. But it's also bringing them to a sense of bringing them 0 to 1 on a subject. And how one way you can easily show your authority is even if you're just a couple steps ahead, and let's say they're a business owner, and then you give them really small like feedback or just one like suggestion, you can bring them 0 to 1 on their relationships or something, and that can be done in your building the entire time. So when we're speaking about frameworks, word tracks, or analogies, and since we've mainly been talking about like external things, I want to jump into your program, Summer Academy. So like what are like some analogies or word tracks you specifically teach to your students that consistently help people close more deals?
I will give one. I'm thinking about whether I would give an analogy or a frame. I'll give one frame that I really like. It's an objection handling frame. It's for the fear objection. And I'm going to give it because it's super simple. I've used it many, many times. A lot of my students use it. I don't remember where I learned it, in all honesty, but I really like it. It's the logical businessman versus emotional businessman analogy or frame. I'm not sure if you've heard it, but it's very, very simple. Somebody gives you the fear objection, and you come back to, okay, well, let me just ask you a question. Let's take a step back. There's two businessmen. One makes decisions purely out of logic. One makes decisions purely out of emotion. Which one's going to be more successful at the end of the day? They're always going to tell you that it's the logical one because it's just very, very obvious. Something that I'll add to it sometimes, so I'll be like, the logical one, makes decisions purely numbers on a piece of paper, correctness, factual information. And then the emotional one makes decisions, how they feel that day, if they're scared, if they're happy, whatever it may be. They're always going to tell you the logical one because that's the right answer. And then you'll tie back to, okay, well, then let me just ask you this. I totally agree. I think you're completely right. Sometimes I'll make them back it up and I'll ask why, and then they'll explain why. And I'll say, is it fair then, if we assume that the logical businessman is the one that's going to be more successful, and I completely agree, that we take emotion out of the conversation for a minute because it's not going to help us move forward.
That's my reframe.
Yeah. And then they take that out of the conversation. I say, okay, so logically then, talking purely logic, pros and cons, let's list some of the pros of if you were to actually get started with this. Let's list some of the cons. A lot of the time offers have guarantees. If your offer has a guarantee, easiest thing ever, because the con is going to hit the guarantee. Then there's essentially no cons, all pros. They're still going to, then you can easily cycle back and close it. Very, very simple. You just need to box them in to thinking purely logically. But the other thing is, even if your offer doesn't have a guarantee, the pros will always outweigh the cons in everything. Unless you're a multi-billionaire, the pros will always outweigh the cons. Whatever your goals are, moving out of my parents' house, and then I want to retire my mom, and I want to buy a Lamborghini, and I want to, quit my job and support my girlfriend and buy a fancy watch, whatever. The worst thing that can happen is you go from where you are now to zero. And a lot of the time, these prospects don't have a crazy amount to lose. So their pros are always going to outweigh the cons. And in that sense, it's always going to be the logical decision in their mind. So they'll do it anyway. So I really like that. I think it's really easy to wrap your head around. There's a lot of frames that are great. That one's one of the simplest ones to me that really works well.
100%. Two things to add to that. One being one of my favorite ones. I know Yash and Andres do it is like the Usain Bolt analogy, and then like the lion. And I know like there's a lot of other like analogies that people use, and then it also goes back to like the standing out part. Like a lot of closers use the exact same analogies, and they use like the keys to the castle and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it is terrible, and it makes every closer look the same besides like the actual like appearance. So if we were to speak about what they should say, what do new closers say that they should not say?
I guess in specific, what exactly do new closers say that they shouldn't say? I would say just very, very simply, they read directly from the script. So that's it. But I want to say one thing in order to solve this problem overall, if you are a new closer and You're worried about what Ethan's saying. You don't want to say the same analogy that everybody else is saying. It's very, very easy. So I'm going to talk about that Usain Bolt analogy. I'll explain it very briefly just so that everybody's familiar. But it's essentially you put Usain Bolt on the track line running for a gold medal. He's going to run very fast. But if you put a lion behind him or a grizzly bear or whatever it may be, he's going to run a lot faster because now he has that consequence. He doesn't only have the goal. He has the consequence. And that's in order to reframe somebody to give us a better consequence. Now, the way that I've taught this to some of my students before is I've taught them this without Usain Bolt, but actually using a fat boy running after an ice cream truck.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. If he runs after the ice cream truck, you know, he wants the ice cream, he's going to run pretty fast. If you put a white van behind him, he's going to run a lot faster because he doesn't want to get kidnapped. Whatever it may be. You can sit around with your friends and literally, I've done this before. Just think of different variations to these analogies or new analogies all day. It's very, very fun to do. It's very, very easy to do as well. And you'll come up with new things like that in itself. No prospect, I don't think, is going to make that connection to Usain Bolt. Also, the crazier it is, the better it works a lot of the time. That's why when I do the Usain Bolt analogy, if I do, I make it insane. Like I'll say that there's a lion behind him, stuff like that, and I'll really make it sound crazy. If I do the fat boy, I will do the white van, make it sound like he's about to get kidnapped, whatever it may be. Because number one, it adds a little bit of humor to it. It also humanizes it, but it pulls them in. It makes them actually intrigued, not just like
engaged.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I know we talked a lot about sales internally and externally, but like I said, wanted to talk about Thumber Academy. So I know you mentioned in your YouTube videos, your trainings, etc. I've talked to a few of your students before, and they're all great. Like, if I was one of your students, what would be like the first like message that I should say on my Loom video when I'm applying to offer? Because I know in your program you like give them opportunities that they can apply to, etc. Like, what's your coaching around looms? Because for me, all looms look the same. Like 99% of them, like, hey, my name is this, I'm a DM sitter, I've cash collected XYZ. And it's like, come on, man, find one way to stand out besides repeating like the exact same course content from 2023.
100%. You just answered the question for me. It's make yourself seem different. Don't do what everybody else is doing. You know, I can teach one method, but guess what? If I teach one method to
everyone will use it. Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of that. Of sounding differently, doing something different. I've gone so far as I've had a student do a loom completely standing up with his entire body in the frame. And guess what? It landed him offers because it was different. The biggest thing that I tell people to focus on, well beyond the actual framework of the loom and what they're saying, is number one, to sound different, but number two, to actually sound energized and sound like they want the opportunity. That's the biggest thing when I hire. And if you even wanted to, this is something I've done on group calls before in my program. I have hundreds of applications to a type form of reps, not for my program, looking to apply to opportunities. Probably have 500 looms. And I've gone through on calls and I've done entire group calls dedicated to looking at these looms, telling them who I'd hire, who I wouldn't hire, why I'd hire them. That's very valuable, but it always comes down to how somebody sounds. I'll watch 30 seconds of a loom and I'll know whether I want to hire this guy or whether I don't. And it comes down to their energy, how they actually sound. Yes, their tonality is important because it's a skill set, but it's also important to their energy. Do I even want to work with this person? Are they going to be good at sales? I can tell within the first 5 seconds of meeting somebody of whether they're good at sales or not. I was in the sauna like a week ago with actually this girl. That's probably like 20 something, 30 something. I had a short conversation with her. She made some comment to me because I was wearing a sweatshirt because I was actually cutting weight at the time. And she made like some comment to me. I had a conversation with her 30 seconds and I figured out that she was in sales 100%. And I made a comment to her. It turned out I was right. She was in sales for some pharmaceutical company. You can tell, and you want to tell that somebody's good based on your loom. So I'll cut it there. And I gave a crazy long response, but
all good, no worries. Yeah, for me, like I said, used to be in sales, still do it to some extent. Like, everyone does it, regardless whether in high ticket sales or not. And I can easily spot like, hey, this person is purposely like mirroring me, repeating the past couple words, like doing the they're tapping on their shoulder to build that connection. So I said, like, stop mirroring me, bro. We're just normal people. Just give it a break. So yeah, 100%. So to speak more about creativity and standing out, I want to speak more about how you market your offer. I know you mentioned in all your content, you try to Twitter, blew up, did well, but that's organic. You have to find one way to more scalable. I know Jeremy Haynes does it, is like scale it and nail it, and then also organic helps. But one way to absolutely crush it to get to those $1 million months is by doing paid ads. So is it you and your team, or do you like outsource to an agency that helps you with your ad creatives?
No, we've never used a media buyer. Never used anything like that. We purely film everything ourselves, run everything ourselves, everything.
Okay, cool. What's your, out of all of the ad creatives that you've filmed, what's been the most favorite to film? I like the pool video the best.
The pool video.
Yeah,
Uh,
when you,
breaking the pool. I don't know how that performed actually. I assume I'm pretty sure it performs decent because we continue running it. That was just, bro, some of these things happen. You can tell that we don't use a media buyer when you watch our ad creatives, because nobody would ever tell us to do that. But we were just, we had a pool table at our disposal. We were filming ad creatives. We decided, all right, I'm just going to break this and then pan to me, and then I'll go through the exact same script that I do in the other ad creatives, and maybe that'll hook people in. Maybe it'll draw them in. Another one, I think the first ad creative I ever made was holding up my Rolex and saying I
think I've seen that one before.
Yeah, I think we ran that for a while. I like the ones where it's like pretending that you're DM setting and the filmer walks up to you. He's like, oh, what are you doing? Because I'm texting my phone like this. And I'm like, oh, I'm just remote DM setting.
Yeah, it's like it's not necessarily like bait and switch, but it's like, what's your career? So then it flips. It's like those motivational things on TikTok or like Instagram where it's like a brand new video and it just goes into your inspiration. Exact same thing applies to that. And I know, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, but my favorite ones were I liked filming Orson's I'm behind the camera and his W2 one. I like that. And then there's one of mine. Shoot. I'll tell you if I remember it. There's one of mine that stands out. I should be able to.
Cool. Is it the one where you're, I think it was at Andres's place? Or is that like a place like you rented or like stayed at for a while? It was like in Austin. It was like the windows behind you.
I remember that one. That doesn't really stand out to me. I think that did work out. That was us talking about. Oh yeah, I know exactly. That was at Andres's place in Houston. That one was decent, but I'll.
It's fine.
I remember it. Ready?
What is it?
It was the whiteboard one. Have you ever seen that one for me or no?
I've been hammered with your ads. So
I did it twice. I did it once in Houston, and then I did it once at my house on a whiteboard. And it's just the entire business model all mapped out, and it has like pictures, like a picture I drew of TJR and like a picture I drew of Brez.
I might have seen that. I don't know. Yeah, I see a lot of that.
I really like that one. I think it flows very well. It also had that visual aspect, and it's also it was one of our best performing ads.
Okay, cool. So just to transition ever so slightly for the sake of time, I want to speak about word of mouth, because I know it goes back to our point originally. There's so many people that wants to get into high ticket sales, and then there's additionally a lot of people who have been selling offers. I know there's Impact Team. I know there's like the big dogs out there, people who used to be big dogs in the space, who used to do like online high ticket sales, transition into something else. So with that being said, one thing that like interests me the most about like programs like yours is the role of word of mouth. So how much of your growth has come from referrals, student success stories versus like paid ads, Twitter, etc.?
In the beginning, almost all of it came from referrals and student success stories. We get referrals ever so or relatively often, but we don't market that as something that like we're not paying people to refer people to our program. So it's not as big of a thing as it might be in some of these other programs where like that's the business model is, you know, you join and you bring somebody in and then you make 30% or something like that. I know that that's a big thing in info. That's not something that we do. So we do get referrals in the beginning. We didn't do that either, but we would pay people. We would like, it wouldn't be a marketed thing, but people would send us people and we would pay them a referral cost. And it was a bigger thing. How many come off of student results is the biggest thing though. And I would say when you were asking me about what we try and like, how do we stand out? Because there's so many people. That's the answer. It's no marketing technique. It's nothing like that. It's the results, letting them speak for themselves. You know, I don't have to brand some, you know, I have branded like the Trojan horse method and stuff like that, but I don't have to understand, the TACP or like anything that we're specifically teaching. I think it just comes down to letting our results speak for themselves. And I think I can say very bluntly and straightforwardly, a lot of the programs that you're going to buy into are going to teach you the same things. There's going to be variability in the way that they're teaching you it. There's going to be variability in the coaches and who you want to learn from and who you actually like as a person. But beyond that, I think too, a lot of the information, probably 80% of the information overlaps, not only in sales, but pretty much every business model or pretty much everything, any skill. The information overlaps. The difference is whether you're actually going to start, whether you're actually going to learn it. And with us, we let the results speak for themselves. That's what we try and do.
100%. And as well, like I know you mentioned like you've been branding your frameworks too. Likewise, so I'm like your sales, I do like content marketing, etc. So the over establishing thing that you want to recognize is my top goal, my short-term and long-term goal is to become one of the best social media marketers out there, specifically on the point of conversion. So like CTAs, intent, etc. So like one of my frameworks is like every good video needs to die. Which first of all, like gets your attention, which like, what do you mean every good video needs to die? And then, so die stands for disrupt, get the person's attention, inject the value, whether it is entertainment, education, or mix of both, and then execute, actually create the video, mindset issue, all that fun stuff.
Right.
Then there's a second layer to that. It goes back to my goal. Disrupt, like what current belief is disrupted, what new one is injected, and execute. What's the best thing that the prospect knows that they need to do and will do based off of the content in the video? So like that's one of my frameworks that I use, like still do 100%. Yeah. And there's like dozens of others that I have, and it just one way to stand out is by having those frameworks. Of course, people can copy them, but they might not know the reasoning behind that. They might not know, and it's also like they will have to catch up because it's like also, the copying thing.
Also, if you're the person who brands it, it's always going to come back to you. That's why the branding is
100%. 100%. So to wrap up, a few quick like rapid fire questions. If you had to start over today with no audience and no reputation, but your current skill set is still like there, how would you rebuild trust and credibility in the market as quickly as possible to get to your goals?
I'd find one person. I would go into growth operating. I'd find one person, focus on that person, get them tremendous results. I would film content across the entire journey. I would post that content. I would make sure that the entire journey is documented. I would get that person fantastic results, and then the trust would already be rebuilt. I'd find one person, focus on them, get the results. And also, I'll just say this really quick. That was like the hook to one of my videos, like 2 videos ago, was if I started from absolutely nothing. This is what I entire video filmed on that.
100%. All right, cool. So one last, like 2 more is, where do you see the high ticket sales space evolving over the next few years? Because I know a lot of people are saying like high ticket sales is dead. I don't think it is. It's just going to be reshaped. So how do you think it's going to evolve, especially with like AI and automation entering the market?
I think setting will evolve more than closing. I don't think closing will evolve at all. I think that people say that it's dead because of saturation, but the issue is there's so many new info products and there's so many new people who are looking to start it. And by month 2, all of those people are gone. So literally, let's say 1 million people want to start. 2 months in, there's still the same amount of people. Everybody quits. I'm sure you've seen it too. Even back in the day when we started 2 years ago, when it was a lot more niche, it wasn't as popular. Everybody was quitting left and right. There's not many friends that I still have that were still in it. There's a couple, but most people just quit. They just tapered off. So I don't see that as an issue at all. Closing is a skill that will always be around. It always has been, and it always will be. Sales is a skill that, like you said, whether you like it or not, you use it every single day. Use it in your conversations. Use it when you try and persuade somebody, to go to a different dinner or something like that. You're always using sales every single day. So that's a skill that's not really going to taper off as well. Setting could evolve. People have tried before to use AI, and honestly, they've done a terrible job at it. But I'm waiting too for somebody to do something good with it so that we can start implementing that. But from what I've seen, people have tried and tried and tried, and I've never seen a good one. I have a story on it, but I know we're coming close.
Yeah, all good. Yeah, it just maybe potentially might be in the software thing that you mentioned earlier on about like
Yeah,
that.
that's something that I could definitely do. I feel like I could probably do a better job than most people have tried because it's been bad. It hasn't been a good look.
No shots fired. Okay, cool. So for the last question, I found this is a great one to ask, is if you could speak in a clippable moment in 30 seconds on any subject of your choosing, what would it be?
You want me to do it? Or we're just
Go
okay.
ahead.
Be consistent because if you aren't consistent, if you start and then you quit, or you start and then you fail and then you quit, you will never see results. However, if you're willing to start, if you're willing to find something, if you're willing to commit to it for 60 days, 90 days, a year, I promise you will see results 100%. I have never met somebody in my entire life who has devoted themselves to something for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and not been successful in it. If you put your focus to it every single day, you will be surprised by the results that you will get, and you will reach whatever your wildest goals are. But you just have to start. You have to be consistent. You can't quit. Very simple.
Awesome. All right, sounds good. All right, thank you guys for watching today's video. This is your guest, Russell Sage, an absolute killer. Thank you guys and have a good one. All right, and then we can just end the recording.